Who would have thought that a flat tire on the street would be the start of a chain of events that would change Jake Miller's life forever? When he stopped his car to help a homeless man collapsed on the sidewalk, he was just thought it was a small act, nothing more. But the old man left Jake with a simple sentence that haunted his mind forever. "You're better than you think." Unexpectedly, those words turned out to be the key that helped Jake dare to step into the door of a great opportunity. Sometimes kindness doesn't just save others, it also lights a path we never thought of. Welcome to Kindness Stories, where every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change a life. Today, we will explore the surprising story of a seemingly ordinary guy whose kindness opened the door to his destiny. Listen and feel, because who knows, you might see yourself in his journey. Listen closely as we start our journey. Horns blared along the busy streets of New Haven. Truck wheels clattered against the gray pavement. Jake Miller sat behind the wheel, his hands clenched, his eyes darting nervously to the dashboard clock. It was nearly 2 p.m., and he was 15 minutes behind schedule for his next delivery. "Damn," Jake muttered, glancing at the traffic jam ahead. He knew all too well what would happen if a delivery was late. His boss, Mr. Robbins, always stressed that 1 late is your problem, 2 late is the company's problem. Jake had heard this enough times to memorize it. And today, another late. Jake Miller, 29, is a delivery man for the shipping company Swift Logistics. It's not his dream job, but it pays the rent on his cramped apartment in the west end of the city, and it's enough to get by. Jake had dreamed of becoming a mechanical engineer, but that dream was cut short when his mother became seriously ill. His college tuition was cut to pay for hospital bills. Jake's life has been a series of deliveries, bills, and a growing sense of helplessness. The traffic ahead slowly moved forward, and Jake stepped on the gas. But after only about 500 meters, a rumbling sound came from under the car. The car shook violently and then stopped. Jake sensed something was wrong. He gritted his teeth, pulled the car to the side of the road, turned on the hazard lights, and got out to check. Oh, a flat tire, a blown tire. Jake scratched his head, swore, and opened the trunk to get his tools. At this rate, he was going to be at least 30 minutes late. Worst-case scenarios flashed through his mind. Customer complaints, angry Mr. Robbins, a final warning, or worse, dismissal. Jake bent down, preparing to change the tire, when his eyes caught sight of a scene across the street. An older man with a bushy beard and a thick, dusty coat was rummaging through an old canvas bag. Suddenly, the man fell to the ground, spilling the bag. Oddities, canned food, old water bottles, and a few torn pieces of paper. Strange smells. Jake hesitated. To help or not? He glanced at his phone, 2:10 p.m. If he got up to help, it would take him a few more minutes. But the man was still struggling, trying to get up on his skinny knees. "Just a few minutes," Jake muttered. "I'll make it quick." He stood up and crossed the street at top speed. The man looked up at Jake, his eyes filled with surprise, but also a bit of hesitation. Jake swallowed a bit of his ground, and it was hard to speak at first. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, bending down to pick up the scattered items. "Ah, thank you," the old man replied hoarsely. "My legs, too weak to keep my balance." Jake quickly picked up the items and placed them in the tattered canvas bag. He noticed that the old man's water bottle had broken, spilling water on the sidewalk. "Here, let me help you up." Jake held out his hand. The man took Jake's hand, a thin, dry hand, but still with some strength. Jake pulled him up, straightening his bag. "Do you need anything?" Jake asked, his eyes sincere. The man chuckled, revealing a few missing teeth. "I'm fine. You've helped enough. Really. You're kinder than most people I've met. Sometimes, all it takes is a hand to turn a bad day around." Jake smiled shyly, not thinking that his small action would be recognized like that. He hoped he wouldn't have to ever do that again. But, just a little thing, he shook his head, then pulled a sandwich he'd brought for lunch from his pocket. "Do you need this? I have other food in the car." When she left, the man opened his eyes wide, slightly surprised but also unable to hide his gratitude. "Really? Are you sure?" "Sure," Jake said, placing the sandwich in his hand. "Take care, sir." The old man stared at Jake for a moment, his eyes filled with something deeper than gratitude. "You know what, boy?" he said slowly. "You're better than you think you are. Don't forget that." Jake paused. The words, so casual as they were, seemed to touch a place inside him that was filled with fear and self-doubt. Before he could reply, the man was limping away. He looked at his small back, his heart a little moved. "Better than I thought." Jake took a deep breath and turned back to the car. Turning back to the flat tire, he bent down to continue changing it. His hands worked quickly, but his mind was wandering to the homeless man's words. "I am better than I thought." Jake wasn't sure if that was true, but something in his heart felt lighter. Less than 15 minutes later, the tire was replaced. Jake dusted himself off, hopped into the cab, and continued his delivery. Although he was still behind schedule, his mood had changed. Something, maybe hope, was flickering inside him. This section creates a pivotal turning point in Jake's inner journey. Helping the old man is not just a random moment, but also an opportunity for him to confront his own self-doubt. Through helping others, Jake realizes his own worth. The old man's words, "You're better than you think," become the seed of change in Jake's psychology. Part 3 will continue with the unexpected situation when Jake receives a call from Emily, leading to a great opportunity for him. Jake's kindness accidentally becomes the key to a new path in his life. The truck rolled along the asphalt, damp from a light afternoon rain. Jake kept glancing at his watch. It was 2:45 p.m., 45 minutes behind schedule. He knew Mr. Robbins would have something to say about this. "This time I'll probably get a pay cut," Jake thought to himself, sighing softly. The next delivery was to a large office building downtown. The client was Harper & Co., where he regularly delivered important documents. They were notoriously picky, and Jake always tried to be on time there. But today, everything went wrong. The truck stopped right at the curb. Jake quickly turned off the engine, jumped out, and grabbed the box. As he was about to enter the building, the phone in his pocket rang. He pulled out his phone and glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Only 2/4 of the text message went on. He clicked the screen. He tapped the phone screen for more data. Jake was about to hang up, but something compelled him to pick up. "Jake here." "Hi, Jake. I'm Emily Harper, the HR director at Harper & Co." The woman's voice was friendly, professional, but also firm. Jake frowned. "Emily Harper, HR director. Did I do something wrong?" "Yes, can I help you?" he asked, his voice cautious. "Actually, I wanted to thank you," Emily said. "I've noticed you on the last few deliveries. You've always been so thoughtful. Last time, you even carefully placed the package on the table and checked that it wasn't damaged. That made a big impression on me." Jake was surprised. All day he had hoped to avoid being scolded, but he had never expected anyone to thank him. "Thank you, but it's just my job," he replied, his voice shy. "Don't sell yourself short, Jake," Emily said, her tone becoming more serious. "We're looking for a position to help coordinate internal operations. I think you might be a good fit. Would you like to talk more about the opportunity?" Jake stood rooted to the curb. Opportunity? Job? Operations? He had never thought he could do anything other than drive a delivery truck. "I am not sure I can handle it," Jake replied, trying to keep the worry out of his voice. "Don't worry. If you have good organizational skills and the ability to work under pressure, I think you can do well. We'll train you," Emily said. "Can you stop by our office this Friday?" "Absolutely," Emily said. "Can you stop by our office this Friday at 10 o'clock? Jake hesitated. An image of Mr. Robbins frowning and shouting flashed through his mind. "Friday? Yeah, I'll be there," Jake replied almost automatically. "Very well. Come see me at 10, my Eam." "Thanks, Jake, and don't forget that you deserve this," said the principal, patting Father Francis on the back. The call ended. Jake stood still, staring at the phone, as if afraid it would vibrate and Emily would withdraw the invitation. "Chance," he muttered, echoing her words. For the first time in a long time, he felt something hopeful fill his heart. There was a stiff breeze as they made their way uptown. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay on the cramped bed, the ceiling covered with yellow stains from water leaks. His eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. His mind was spinning with thoughts. Should I go? I've never done office work before. I don't even know how to send a professional email. What if I fail? The old fear dragged him down like a rock sinking to the bottom of a lake. He remembered his first job interview 3 years ago when he was rejected because of his lack of experience. He had not dared to try again since. "Can you speak?" the counselor had, gazing down at his troubled. "What if I do something wrong? What if they laugh at me?" he muttered. The next morning, Jake decides to go see the only person he can think of, Mr. Sam, the homeless man he helped the day before. But he's capable of making the trek by himself. Jake found Mr. Sam sitting on a bench in a nearby park. He was wrapped in a thin, ragged blanket and sipping a cup of cheap coffee. Looking a little worse. "Hello, do you remember me?" Jake asked, walking slowly closer. Mr. Sam looked up, his haggard face brightening. "Remember the good boy with the sandwich?" Jake smiled and sat down beside him. "Do you have time to talk?" "Of course, boy. What's up?" Jake told the story of Emily's invitation, of his fear and insecurity. Mr. Sam listened attentively, nodding occasionally. "Like what?" "Well, let me tell you something," Mr. Sam said, taking a sip of his coffee. "You had your chance. Chance doesn't come twice. I was where you were. Hesitant, afraid, worried I wasn't good enough. But you know what happened? I let it go. Now, every day I think about the chance I didn't take." Jake was silent. Mr. Sam's words rang like a bell in his mind. "Do you think you're not good enough?" Mr. Sam asked. "Do you remember who helped me pick up things that fell on the sidewalk? Who gave me a sandwich without hesitation? It was you. A good person, a doer, a problem solver." Jake smiled wryly. "It was only a small matter." "No, boy," Mr. Sam insisted. "You did what many others would not do. You deserve this chance." Jake sat silent for a long moment. His heart was heavy, but this time not with fear, but with awareness. The post-traumatic stress symptoms he suffered had become something he expected and ignored. "Do you think you can do it?" Jake asked, his voice low. "I don't think so," Mr. Sam said, his eyes fixed on Jake. "I know you can." That statement was like a small flame that lit up the darkness in Jake's mind. Harper & Co's Building.com. He was wearing an old but neatly pressed shirt, trousers, and worn but clean leather shoes. His heart was pounding, sweat beaded on his forehead. His hand hesitated on the doorknob. "Can I do this?" Then, remembering Mr. Sam's words, he took a deep breath, pushed away his fear, and clenched his fists. "I deserve this." Jake opened the door and walked in. The glass doors swung slowly behind Jake, shutting out the outside world. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool air from the air conditioning on his face. Ahead was a gleaming reception hall where everything seemed perfect down to the last detail, from the marble floors to the lush green plants neatly placed on either side. He clutched the file in his hand, his palms sweating. Each step sounded like a knock on the door, the rhythm reminding him of the burden he bore. "Just calm down. We've come this far." The receptionist looked up from her computer screen, smiling warmly. "Hello, you are Jake Miller, right? Emily is waiting for you on the 3rd floor, room 307, she said, her voice soft and professional. "Yes, thank you," Jake replied, trying to smile confidently, though his heart was still a little wobbly. The elevator took him to the 3rd floor. He stood there, watching the floor number flash by. His eyes followed the number 3, and when it lit up, Jake took another deep breath. "I deserve this," he said. Sam's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time, Jake actually believed them. Emily Harper sat behind her walnut desk, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun. When she saw Jake enter, she stood up, a bright smile on her face. "Jake, hello! Glad you came," she said, shaking his hand with pleasant friendliness. "Hello, Emily," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice from shaking. "Sit down," she said, pointing to the chair opposite. The interview didn't go as Jake had imagined. Emily didn't ask the typical questions like, "What are your strengths and weaknesses?" or "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" Instead, she asked him about his current job, the challenges he'd faced, and how he'd overcome them. When she asked about the hardest challenge he'd ever faced, Jake hesitated. Then, for some reason, the image of Mr. Sam popped into his mind. After all, he thought, life and death were just playing out portraits. Why define things so hard? "Time I was late for a delivery because my car had a flat tire," he began. "I was really worried because my boss didn't like his employees to be late. But while I was changing the tire, I saw an old homeless man fall down. At first, I thought I didn't have time to help, but I couldn't ignore it." Helpless using the law drifted off into a flat sleep. Emily leaned forward, listening intently. "I helped him up, picked up his things, and gave him a sandwich I had brought. At first, I thought it was just a small gesture, but he said something to me that I will never forget." Jake paused, his eyes looking into the distance. He said, "I was better than I thought, and I realized sometimes the little things you do can mean a lot more than you think." Emily smiled, leaned back in her chair, and nodded in agreement. "You know, Jake, that's exactly why I wanted to meet you. Operations requires not only organizational skills, but also empathy. You have both." Jake looked at her, surprised. "You really think so?" "You don't have to think that, I know," Emily insisted, her smile sincere. "We're not looking for someone perfect. We're looking for someone who can stay calm in the midst of chaos and still care about the people around them. And you've proven that." "How?" Jake's heart sank. For the first time, he didn't feel like just a delivery guy. For the first time, he felt valuable. End quote. "So, are you ready to join our team?" Emily asked, tilting her head towards him. Jake sat up straight. This time there was no hesitation in his voice. "Yes, I am ready." The early summer sun streamed through the large windows of the Harper & Co. building, casting a golden glow on the walls. Jake stood at his desk, dressed in a crisp white shirt and navy tie. On his chest was an employee badge that read, "Jake Miller, Head of Operations." He is checking the list of outgoing shipments. Under his management, the company's shipping process has been optimized, reducing processing time by 20% and minimizing delays. "Jake, there's someone in the lobby asking for you," the receptionist announced over the intercom. "Who is it?" Jake asked. He didn't give me his name, but he said you'd recognize him, the receptionist chuckled. Jake put down his checklist and walked down the hall. There, Mr. Sam was sitting in a waiting chair, his beard still bushy, but his coat cleaner. Sam welcomed them all in his usual comfortable voice. Mr. Sam. Jake walked quickly over and shook his hand. How are you? Why didn't you call me? No need to call, Mr. Sam chuckled. I knew you would recognize me. Jake looked at the old man, a warm feeling rising in his heart. It all came full circle. You were right, Jake said, his voice lower. I deserve this, he explained. Of course. Sam clapped Jake on the shoulder, his old eyes sparkling. And you more than deserved it. You took it. He turned to Mrs. Tumak, who still sat in a corner of the room, her head lulled and sleepy. Jake laughed, for the first time in his life, no longer feeling anxious about tomorrow. Do you need anything? Can I help you? Jake asked, his eyes sincere. You have done me a favor, young man, said Mr. Sam, his voice warmer than ever. You have given me faith in the goodness of men. Jake not only changed his life, but also the lives of Mr. Sam and many others. A small act of kindness opened doors he never thought he could walk through. Sometimes just one act of kindness can change someone's life and our own. Kindness is not just giving, it's a slow burn, but if we're patient, it can light a path we never expected. Jake Miller walked through the door of kindness, and he himself became a guiding light for others. And that's the magical power of kindness. Sometimes, just one small act can change our whole life. If you've ever hesitated between helping someone or turning away, remember, kindness always brings good things, even when we least expect it. Thank you for listening to today's story on Kindness Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share this story to spread kindness to more people. See you in the next stories, where every small act can create big miracles.